Thanks for joining me for this week's quick business tip. I'm Jennifer Swineford. I want to talk today about a lie that has flooded the business world. If you have spent any time on social media, you've seen it. It is the 5 a.m. CEO lie. There is a video out there, several of them. People are doing it all the time. The entrepreneur wakes up between 4 and 5 a.m. They drink a glass of warm lemon water, sit in an ice bath for 5 to 10 minutes, meditate, and then write 3 full pages in a beautiful leather bound journal. After all of this, they run for 5 miles and they do it all before the sun comes up. And there you sit with your lukewarm coffee between the hours of 7 and 9 a.m., watching the video on social media, and you start to feel like you're already behind and you're a bit of a failure. Well, today I want to talk to you about how to manage your sanity while staying on time and on schedule. Because if you are a service provider, you know that your days do not look like the pristine Instagram reel that people like to post. As a service provider, your days are probably messy more often than not. Clients are going to call you with emergencies or things that they feel like are emergencies. Inspections are going to fail if you're a realtor, and suppliers can often delay shipments. And if you try to build a rigid, perfectly color-coded 15-minute increment type schedule every day, it will fall to pieces before 9:30, 3 out of those 5 days, almost guaranteed. And then you spend the rest of the day feeling guilty. I have found I do my best work when I don't schedule those very rigid routines. But I also don't want to fly by the seat of my pants. Instead, what I like to do are creating rhythms. It's a architecture, a framework, some guidelines, bumpers on the bowling alley type of thing for your week that is strong enough to hold your business together, but flexible enough to allow us to be human and stay sane. So today, what I want to do is get rid of a lot of the toxic hustle culture of very rigid time management and instead look at the difference between the time that you take to work on your business and the time that you take to work in your business. And we're also going to talk about scheduling margin because if your calendar is 100% full every minute of every day, there is no time to be you, and more importantly, no time to really care deeply for your clients. So grab a piece of paper, a pen. We are going to get to work. Now, if you're like me, you have found yourself completely exhausted at the end of a Tuesday. There are The reason that this happens is because there are two different ways that the human brain experiences time. Now, this concept was originally thrown out there by Paul Graham. It is the single most important concept for a service-based business owner to grasp. He calls it the maker time and the manager time. I like to call it working in your business or on your business. So first is the manager time. We like to divide this into 1 hour or 30-minute pockets of time. This is the meetings, the Zoom calls, check-ins with your staff or contractors, taking a look at your inbox, making phone calls, replying to text messages, and This is the time that you are often problem solving. This time is very reactive. Another thing that you can look at is the maker time. The maker time is divided into larger chunks of time. So these are like half a day block, 2, 3 hour chunks. This is the time where you set aside to do the deep work of your business. This is what I like to call working on your business. So when I'm going to sit down and map out website architecture, write core messaging, whether it's for my business or for a client, this is not something that I can break up into 15 or 30-minute increments and bounce between phone calls and text messages while I'm doing it. When I am writing great marketing copy that positions the client that I'm doing the work for as a guide, this is going to require a lot of deep, uninterrupted focus. Because a lot of times it can take 15 to 30 minutes just to get my brain into the gear it needs to get in to do the work I need it to do. Now, maybe you're a realtor and you're wondering, what do you do during this time? For some realtors, it's writing that really amazing listing description, or it's when you dig in and really start analyzing the comps for some buyers that you're working with. Maybe you're a contractor, and this is when you are really working on the estimating for a big kitchen remodel. This is the time that you need to just like, a lot of times I refer to it as head down work. You just need to just shut everything out, shut everything off, put your head down and get the work done. And because of how our brains work, when we're doing that kind of heads down work, we need it to be in larger chunks of time because it's going to take you 15 minutes just to really get into the flow of it. Now, what I see a lot of entrepreneurs doing is they sit down to write a proposal. It should be heads down time. They're 15 minutes into this project. They're finally feeling focused and their phone goes off. Maybe it's an email, a text message, a client has a question about a tile selection, and it's just going to take you a second, so you answer it. Then it takes you 20 minutes to get back on track to where you were in the proposal. At that time, your phone goes off again. This time it's a text message from the title company because they're missing a signature on some paperwork. So you take a few minutes and do that and try to get back to the proposal, but it takes you another 20 minutes to refocus. So by the end of the day, you've worked for 9 hours, but you haven't really created anything. You spent the entire day playing defense, putting out fires. So to fix this, what I have found works for me and works for a lot of my clients is that you really need to separate heads down time and putting out fire time. So for me, my CEO days are Mondays and Fridays. I like to start my week and end my week with, the times where I am going to work on my business and I'm going to keep my head down and just get it done. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I divide these into chunks of time where I'm going to take client calls, do podcast interviews, answer emails. And then the other chunk, those are very small chunks. And then the other large chunks on those Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays are times where I am keeping my head down and I'm working on client deliverables. A lot of times those are broken out into 3 and 4 hour chunks of time. So how can we structure a day that's really going to work for our own rhythm? Now, I do not believe in waking up at 4 a.m. and going on a 5 mile run. And I find that when my calendar gets very rigid, it affects me negatively in a lot of different ways. Because if you decide that you're going to wake up at 5 a.m., journal for 20 minutes, work out for 40 minutes, what happens when you wake up with a migraine? Or you wake up and it turns out your kid's sick? The routine breaks and you immediately feel like a failure. So instead of very rigid, brittle routines, if you look at life as a rhythm, it's an ebb and a flow. You still have a cadence, but there's a little bit more flexibility there. So my mornings, for example, typically start out with spending a little time with our new 6-month-old puppy. Many of you know that we adopted Zoe, our cute little Shiba Inu, over the holidays. She was supposed to be a foster, but we fell in love with her and she's amazing. So my morning does not start out with silent meditation and ice baths and journaling. It's about taking Zoe for a walk, making sure she feels love. You know, sometimes she just wants to sit on my lap and chew on one of her chew toys. But where I do sort of put in some roadblocks or bumpers is that I choose not to open my email, not to open my text message. I am not going to let the world start dictating my priorities as soon as I get out of bed. So instead of opening my email or my text message, what I do is I spend 20 minutes reading the Bible, reading the devotional, taking some time for prayer and meditation. Um, and then I open my inbox. That way, I am not starting the very, very first thing in the morning in a reactive type mode and letting other people's urgencies become my priorities. So I get to it. It gets done fairly early in the morning, but it's not going to be the very first thing that I do. Once I make sure that there aren't any emergency type fires, then I go to the gym. After the gym, I really start sitting down at my desk and managing everything. Now, I like to break my day down into three main projects, tasks that are really going to move the needle every single day. Things that absolutely has to get done, not things that can just be on the to-do list or things that are really just busy work, but can oftentimes feel important. These three tasks, I like to make sure that they can be completed in 30 or 60 minutes. Sometimes I give myself as much as 90 minutes per task. If the task can't be completed in that time, I break the task down into smaller chunks that can be completed in 30 to 60 minutes. Because what I like to do is after 60 to 90 minutes of work, I like to give myself a quick 15-minute break just to sort of shake things up, get my mind clear, and really do the work that I'm trying to do without just sitting down at my desk for like 6 hours straight. So you have a pretty good picture of what my morning looks like. Middle of my day, it's anyone's guess. But I like to try to keep some rhythms and routines in there by breaking things down into three main chunks. Then at the end of the day, I choose my shutdown ritual is that I like to go do 20 minutes of yoga or, a lot of times it's 20 minutes of yoga and taking Zoe for a 45-minute walk because we don't really go that far in 45 minutes. She likes to stop and smell everything, but it gets me outside in the sunshine and away from work. If you don't have a shutdown type ritual, you just get to 5 o'clock, close your laptop, and walking in the kitchen, your brain is still going to be back on work. So what a lot of people do is they're going to look at their inbox, make sure they have some notes or flags for anything that needs attention tomorrow. Maybe they write down their 3 tasks that they want to work on the next day. Make sure that, all your text message has been responded to, that kind of thing. And then something mental where, for me, it's the yoga. For some other people, it's just saying, I'm done for the day. Um, and saying it out loud. Because even though it sounds silly, the physical and verbal cue can tell your brain that you're no longer running in business mode. You're now stepping into spouse, parent, human mode. One of the themes that I talk about on a regular basis is unreasonable hospitality. And I have found that it is incredibly difficult to focus on hospitality if I'm always feeling like I'm in a hurry or I'm running late. For example, have you ever tried to have a deep, meaningful conversation with someone who keeps checking their watch or their phone? They're nodding, they're smiling, they're saying, "Oh, really?" Like right at the times where it feels like they should. But in reality, you feel like they're anxious, they're not really present with you. You kind of feel like maybe you're in the way. In that same vein, if you are booking your client calls and meetings back to back from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. with no breaks in your day to clear your mind and refresh yourself and just take time for you, then you become that person who's constantly checking their phone while you're having a coffee with them. Because when a client calls you in a panic for whatever reason, they don't need you to give them a rushed, let me call the vendor. I gotta jump on a Zoom meeting here in 5 minutes. I'll, shoot you a text as soon as I can. What they need instead is someone that has the emotional bandwidth to say, okay, I know that what you're going through right now is so frustrating. I am going to get on the phone with whoever you need to get on the phone with, and I'm going to make this right. I will call you back with an update in 20 minutes or before the end of the day or whatever you have. And you can only say those things when you have margin in your schedule. Margin is just what it is on a piece of paper. It's the empty space in your calendar. The 20 minutes that you give yourself from when one Zoom call is supposed to end and another one is supposed to begin. It's maybe an entire Friday afternoon where you don't have anything on your calendar ever. Most entrepreneurs look at that empty space on their calendar and get like this itchy, anxious feeling. They feel like they should be doing something, they should be producing. But if you can get yourself to mentally reframe that and instead look at it as not wasted time, but like shock absorber type of time in your business, then you can start using this time to order a fantastic Starbucks drink and have it delivered to a client. Or, spend some time handwriting notes to clients because they just had a new baby, or you need to thank them for something that they did. It's time that you can use. Maybe you need an extra 10 minutes on the Zoom call that was supposed to end 5 minutes ago. And if you have back-to-back meetings, you don't have that extra 10 minutes to spend with the person that you're just so close to having a breakthrough with. But when you give yourself a little buffer, a little margin, then you're able to take an extra 5 minutes here, an extra 10 minutes there, and really serve your customers. Because if you really want to deliver a premium luxury client experience, you have to operate not only from a place of abundance instead of scarcity, but you have to operate from a place where you're not anxious, not worried, not feeling like you're behind or up against a deadline every minute of every single day. So, as we wrap up our time together, talking about ways to think about your own time management strategy, I think it's also important to talk about the weekend because we live in a culture that is all about hustle. And I can't tell you how many times I've asked someone, how's work? And their reply is simply, oh, we're so busy. Or how are you doing? I'm fine. I'm just so busy. Like it's like this badge of honor that people want to wear. I'm so busy. Look at me. I get a gold star today for being busy. And as we start really diving into that societal pressure to be busy all the time, we can find ourselves answering work emails at 11 p.m. on a Saturday night just to prove how amazing we are and how dedicated we are. But instead, what if we took those weekends to really invest in our family and our friends and even in ourselves? What if we started to invest in our own rest and just really took the time that we needed to feel refreshed so that 11 a.m. on Monday morning doesn't feel like you've already run 3 marathons? The refusal to rest, the pride that people have in always being busy is almost a sickness that has taken over our society. When instead we take some time during the workday, but certainly on the weekends to fully rest, to turn your phone off, to not check your work emails. This is stepping into trust and believing in yourself and God or a higher power that you know that you have worked hard, served your clients well, and that you are going to take some time and just let things settle. Trust that God is going to do the things that need to be done while you sleep. So here are some action steps that you can take this week. First, define which days or portions of your days are going to be your heads down, big time block kind of days, and which days or portions of your days are going to be the more bouncing between a lot of different smaller projects that are broken up into 15 or 30-minute increments. And we're doing this so that we don't try to write proposals or do heavy lifting for our client deliverables in between phone calls and text messages and emails. You will find that by doing this, You will get so much more done in so much less time because you're using your brain the way it was made to be used. The second thing I want you to do is I want you to create your own morning and evening ritual. So how are you going to get up in the morning to, choose what mood you are going to be in for the day, to, choose your own priorities for the morning, and then how are you going to shut down at the end of the workday and give yourself and your brain permission to clock out and start investing time in your family and your friends. And then the third challenge I have for you this week is to start scheduling some white space in your calendar. Block out at least 2 hours, not all in one chunk, but at least 2 hours every week of space that just doesn't get full, ever. If a client calls and needs a last minute meeting, that white space doesn't get full. That is space that is there for the unexpected. For when a client calls and you weren't expecting them to, and you have other tasks, but you know what? You're in your 15 minutes of white space here so you can have a meaningful conversation, not a rushed one. Time is the only non-renewable resource that you have. If you lose money, you can always make more. But if you lose time, you don't get to make it up later in life. Everybody is only given so many hours that they get to be alive. So if we all manage our time a little less like that frantic, rushing around Superman type person that's just trying to survive the day. And instead, we decide how we're going to build our days and start enjoying the business that we are building, then I think we will just all be happier in general. I'm Jennifer Swineford, and I want to thank you for spending this precious time with me. Until next week. Remember to protect your peace, schedule that white space, and keep striving for your own limitless impact.